We're walking down an abandoned rail trail from the Rain Lake access point, Algonquin Park. And the nice thing about a rail trail is it's often built up quite high. So when you look over to both directions, you're a fair way above the lake, although it's really hard to see the lake. There, that's better. So we've got that lake and that lake. And presumably this rail trail, or rail line, had been built up, and this was like a crossing, or sure. There's some nice islands in that lake. Yeah, it is. We booked a campsite in Algonquin Park, Ontario on Weed Lake. There's only one of them, and we booked it, and it's right up here on the right. A lot of the campsites along this stretch along the lake, the campsite is very close to the trail. Sometimes the Thunderbox, the privy as they call it here, is so close. It's across the trail, in fact, to your campsite. This one, there's this huge descent down to the campsite. And it's a pretty nice campsite. It's on the windward side of the lake, so you get a nice breeze in the summer. I'm not sure if that's a good thing in the winter. In fact, the approach is kind of, there's another route to go down. It takes a longer route. This isn't really that desirable when you have an extremely heavy backpack on. But you come down and here's a campsite. And, oh, it's dinner time. We're cooking dinner. So this is our Firebox stove Nano model. We have loaded it up with logs a little bit like they show on the instructional video, so that you don't stoke it very often. And it's doing quite well. It's quite hot. We have our food, which was dehydrating for a little while in the pot, and is now more officially cooking.
Here's ours.
So when we go hunting for firewood, we find these nice little dead sticks and cut them into 2 to 3 inch pieces. You can put those in the stove box as per the instructions and create a little inferno inside the little box. And although the wind is causing this one all to come out one side, you basically get an awful lot of heat and you don't do an awful lot of stoking. We've got our tarp set up over our tent because there's supposed to be rain coming tomorrow or the next day. And we're all set to start a campfire when and if we feel like it, but for now the only thing that really matters is our dinner. It's nice to think that we can cook almost endlessly, never run out of fuel. In fact, we cut up a lot when we first get here. In case it does rain, we can store a fairly small bag of little sticks and know that they're perfectly dry even if it's torrential rains out. So we're here in Algonquin Park on Weed Lake. This is the only campsite, and that's not our only tent. It's our bigger of our 2 tents, but it's better for when it rains. And so we set that one up. We have some tarps set up Maybe a little more work to come, I'm not sure, but the idea was, oh yeah, we have to move the tent a little more under the tarps, but because we set the tarps up second, and that's probably not the best way to do it. Anyway, so that's our campsite, and the cool thing is the lake that we're on. Why don't I just go down here and see if I get a good view of it. Unfortunately, I'm going to be taking a movie into the sun. Not a good idea, but we're at the leeward side of the lake, and it's going to rain for the rest of the weekend. We can't do any better than this. This lake is ours for Friday to Sunday. We rented it. The whole lake. Oh, well, there's a canoe route through it, but we haven't actually seen anyone on it. I don't know if the next lake up is absolutely beautiful. I imagine it's a lot of people go to it, but we haven't actually seen a canoe on either lake since we've been here. Beautiful islands in the other lake. This one, called Weed Lake, is small, and well, it's not interesting in that there's no islands or anything, but if you go to the other end, you can portage and just go on. But anyway, so this is where Jenny is working with dinner, listening to her MP3 player and using her stick stove. That's a very big log on it for a stick stove, but I bet it works well. Probably won't stock it or stoke it for maybe another hour with that on there. What I'm going to do is to go down to where I get our water, because it's also a very nice vantage point to take a look at the lake. Well, it's a nice vantage point if you walk into the lake. I have water shoes on, so that's what they look like. I'm going to do that. I have to come out this far to get into a deep part where I can gather water to filter for drinking. The portage is kind of just barely around the corner. If one was canoeing here, we backpacked. Oh good, the sun's going in. This may make this a little easier to see. It's not that big a lake, but it's all ours for the weekend, other than if a canoe were to go through. You never know. I mean, it is the height of the season. They might. It is a canoe route.
I hurt myself. Every time
I've been gathering some firewood. It's going to rain for the rest of the weekend, so everything I can gather today we get to burn, the rest will be soaking wet. Guess I should get back to work. got up Saturday morning, and just as we were about to get the water going for coffee, it started raining. You can hear the rain on the tarp. So we have this area where we're able to sit, or at least stand, and in fact the ridgeline's high enough that I have no trouble standing up straight, which is really nice. You get kind of bent over and otherwise. So we have our backpacks in that garbage bag. We have a small supply of firewood here. A few other things. That gray bag is little tiny sticks cut up for the stick stove. And the stick stove is here. It's actually sitting just outside our cover, and it's trying to boil water for coffee. I don't think it's finished yet. Oh, it is! Okay, it's coffee time. Right. Jenny had lit the fire over there, and it seems to have reduced itself to smoke, even though she had logs laying over top of it as a kind of shelter. And then around the back of our tent is where the water drains off, and it wanted to run under the tent, so I dug it a little trench so it could run away. Jenny brought an umbrella so she could tend the fire using an umbrella. We have all our shoes laid out under the shelter. We have what's that, 4 liters of water? No, it's actually down to about 3 that we'll be able to use. Then I have to go out in the rain in my bathing suit and get water from the lake and filter it. Okay, this is our campsite. It didn't rain like it was forecast, and Jenny's finishing off the cooking of our dinner. I know it looks like a lot of smoke, but actually it's doing a good job of simmering the dehydrated vegetables and beef and sun-dried tomatoes and all that stuff. There's the wood we use on the stove. We put it in a plastic bag so if it rains we can keep it dry, but we cut it into little 1.5 inch to 2.5 inch strips depending on how we're operating the stove. This lake, Weed Lake, forget the bag on the tree, which is part of my water purification system. This is Weed Lake. There's one campsite on Weed Lake. We're on it. This is, except for the fact there's a canoe route that goes through if you really want to portage, this is basically our lake. So it's there's been one person came and one person went. That was it. So here is our campfire, done very rudely by putting logs up to it. But I don't have an axe. We didn't bring one, they're heavy. And this works. And it'll probably rain tonight, and that'll be the end of that. And we'll probably do some relighting tomorrow. But if it does rain, having all those logs there sometimes convinces the rain to drain kind of off the fire and not really put it. I've dragged some firewood here, which may remain dry. We could put it under the tarp up at the tent, but I don't know how much we need to have a bonfire tomorrow. Up here is the entrance to our campsite. It's actually quite the incline. There's sort of this huge ridge. The hiking trail is above that ridge and runs, you can't see much of it, it runs along there. And to get down here, it is quite a climb. But this is actually the very best campsite we came across coming all the way here. We looked at so many of them, and this really was the best campsite. We're really glad when we got here. Everything looked just great. It's a little bumpy under the tent. There's a few roots and stuff sticking up, which is usually there aren't any. There's other places you can put the tent, but we liked this one because of the way we could string up the tarps. Right now Jenny is sitting, if it was pouring with rain, she'd be sitting under the tarp. The camp stove is actually just outside, and with the pot on it, it shelters the stove so it doesn't get put out by the rain. And although the smoke is coming this way, except for the last hour, The whole rest of the weekend, the prevailing winds were to put the smoke out the other way. So here's our tent. It's not very neat right now. Anyway, that's it. Clothes. The orange parts on the bottom are self-inflating tent pads. Here's the remainder of our dehydrated food. We are going to have one heck of a breakfast tomorrow. That's kale. That's yellow and green dehydrated beans. That's dehydrated beef. That's dehydrated tortellini. That's rice. And that one was frozen vegetables with some kale mixed in. But we dehydrated like the whole kale. We've eaten half of it so far. It comes out really nice. Any final thoughts, Jenny?
No, I'm fine.
You're fine.
I want to stay here for a week.
Yeah, I know. We have to leave tomorrow. Oh well. We'll know better next time. Whoa. We have this lake for the weekend, all to us, ourselves. And so I decided to go and swim, but I didn't want to get my bathing suit all wet. So I didn't get it wet. Oh, I'm slipping. Okay, this is really natural. I guess I sort of have to come back at some point. Oh well, I'm going to be nice and clean to get the sleeping bag tonight. And I'm not getting my hair wet because I don't want that on my pillow tonight in the sleeping bag or in the tent. Okay, there's the bottom. There's a rock here.